doing
How are
good,
you?
thank you.
I'm like so nervous, but like so excited to be
Oh my
talking to
God, you're so
you.
sweet. Don't be nervous.
I absolutely adored this book
Yay.
and like how I emailed you, like this is the book I've been waiting for. Like it really
Oh my God,
was.
thank you.
So I'm really like genuinely excited to be talking to you. I can recall seeing the cover, which is
Look how many I
truly
have behind
gorgeous.
me. Like it's shameless.
Um, And I remember just sending it to like everyone I know. I'm like, I need to read this book, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm just curious to know like what your first response was when you saw it fully realized.
I cried, right? Like I feel like there's no other reaction I could have had except just being so overwhelmed with emotion. So both when I saw what the cover looked like, that was just incredibly like emotional and rewarding and just like all of these amazing feelings all at once because I feel like I had spent a whole lifetime wishing I had seen a fat girl on a cover of a young adult book who looked happy and like she was thriving. And I didn't feel like I got that when I was, a teenager and I was fat and I was reading these books and I felt like I was always seeing, really thin bodies on the covers of books. And that was really alienating because nobody ever looked like me. And so when you never get to see anybody who looks like you or shares the same traits as you when you're consuming media, that makes you question yourself and it makes you feel like, is there something wrong with me or what's going on here? So the cover itself was amazing. But then getting to like actually hold the book in my hands was another experience that was like just completely surreal. This idea that I wrote this book about fat girls and their happily ever afters and how they deserve all of these wonderful things. And so I was just thinking like that I hoped that this book was able to find the people who like need it most and who deserve to have these feelings reinforced that they matter and that their stories matter.
Absolutely. I feel like something that I like yearn for and I talk about so much is like I need more like fat girls and fat boys on the cover of books. I feel like boys,
Yes.
they'll have them described a certain way and then they'll be like really thin on the cover and it's like, why guys? Like
Yes.
it's so frustrating. So
It
I
is really frustrating. It's like, and I've also read books that featured, like plus size fat characters, and then like the character is nowhere to be seen on the cover. And so you don't like, so even if they're in the book, they may not be on the actual outside of the book, which is like, well, what is that saying? Is that saying we don't deserve to be on that cover? Like what, and I think it's so important to actually like name what the bodies look like and then actually show what those bodies look like. That I think shows like real change and is really what means a lot to at least people like me. Like I would love to see fat bodies everywhere and just think, yes, like body diversity, this is what we need.
exactly. So I ordered your book from the Rip Bodice because I absolutely had to have that book play. It was so beautiful. And so when I got it was a really interesting moment because my sister saw it first. And my sister's not a reader. And
Mhm.
so she saw herself in the book, just on the cover, and she was like, this looks like me. And she told me like as soon as I finish the book, she wants to read it. And so I just want to thank you for like giving me a book like I could connect to and like hopefully something that she resonates with. So yeah, that was just like a really deep moment that I love.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is truly, I hear these stories and it literally like makes me emotional. Like I don't even have the words because that is such like a powerful feeling. I think finding something that really resonates with you and it just reiterates like how much our experiences matter. And when we spend our whole lives not getting that validation, it's such like an aha moment, right? When we're like, whoa, this person looks like me, or this person shares identities as me. And it changes everything. Like suddenly it feels like you're not so alone, which, hello, we all want to feel like we're less alone, right?
Yeah. I like I said, this book ruined me. I cried so much at points where I was just like, oh my God. And I was listening to the audiobook, just kind of like really enjoying the emotion that the voice actors brought to it.
Mm-hmm.
And just the relationship between Charlie and her mom was so heart-wrenching. And I just wanted to know, like, while writing this book, did you ever have moments where you personally had to like take a break and take a step back and kind of like evaluate your emotions?
Totally. So I think like, so this book really was a lot of, my heart that I poured into it. And I pulled from a lot of experiences that I had in my own life. So as somebody who grew up fat and who, had some of these same issues where I had delightful, wonderful, beautiful friends who would take me shopping and would think, oh, we can all just buy things at this store. And I would know, oh my God, I can't fit into anything in this store. And having those moments kind of be drudged up again and think about them was challenging at times for sure. But I also, had the gift of being, several years out of my teen years. Like I'm in my 30s now, so it's been a while. So, and just like reminding myself that the reason I wanted to write about these experiences is because so many of us go through these things, but yet we never get to see them on the screen. We never get to read them on the pages. And I thought it would help like validate those things that, yeah, a lot of us cannot just go into any store and buy whatever we want, and like between Charlie and her mom having that sort of contentious up and down relationship, I thought was really it's a lot of people have these difficult relationships in their families or with loved ones, and it doesn't always have like a nice neat little bow at the end. You don't necessarily like, that's not real, right? Like in real life sometimes you have ups and downs with people that you love, and sometimes the people that we love think that they're saying things that are, well-meaning and that they're good for us, but ultimately end up causing pain or causing strife with us. And you hear people who say things like, well, that's your mom, or oh, that's your sister, or that's your whatever. And it invalidates those painful feelings, because it's like, well, yeah, it is for Charlie. It's like, it is my mom, but she shouldn't be talking to me like that, right? So I wanted to include all of that in this book because I think it's very real, and hopefully it gives people a sense that like they aren't the only person in the world that's going through this. And I will say one of the, I think, hardest scenes that was for me to write was the scene after after Charlie figures out what's going on at the dance with Cal, and just that like really visceral feeling of just being so broken and feeling like that every single thing about you is wrong, right? Like she has this moment where she's looking in the mirror and she's just like, I just want to change absolutely everything about me. And I've had that feeling when I was a teenager, just thinking, God, there's not one part of me that feels like it's right. And I wish I was just someone else. And that's really like painful. But I think a lot of us get to that place at one point or another in our life. And I think Charlie ends up coming out on I think she has to go through that really dark moment so that she can come out on the other side, and you can see her sort of grow and change and like figure herself out.
I love that. And like that scene in particular, oh my gosh, like I related to that so much. And like, even though like I'm, in my 20s, I still have moments of like, I want to rip my skin off sometimes.
Yes.
Like, it's even though like Charlie's a teen, it's like very resonant. And like, I hope that like adult readers don't like belittle that as like, this is a teen issue.
Mm-hmm.
Really like feel that. Um, So reflecting back on your own experiences as a teen, were there any books or movies or TV shows that you saw yourself in or you wish that you were a part of, especially because you love fashion?
I honestly don't feel like I had very much to choose from as a teen. So once I discovered Dumpling by Julie Murphy, that felt like a total game changer for me. And that is a big part of what was like an inspiration for creating this book. But when I was younger, I remember seeing the movie, I think it's called Real Women Have Curves, and America Ferrera starred in it. And I think it was based on a book also, but I could be wrong on that. And so, I mean, full disclosure, I don't really love that statement, real women have curves, because like all women and all bodies matter and are important. But I know that that was the first time I felt like I saw somebody who was even a little bit plus size. Like America Ferrera was not fat in that movie, in my opinion, but she was like chubbier than a lot of the actresses that we were seeing at the time. And she talked about some of those things about what your body looks like and how maybe it's not a Hollywood standard, and what does that mean, and what does that mean in your community. And then she was also a brown girl, and so those things ended up being so meaningful for me. Like I remember I found that movie just like flipping through channels and being like, oh my God, this was made for me. And it was a really great story. But it took a really long time. I think I was a teenager before I saw that. And I'm like thankful that I think it's starting to change. And there are more books out there that feature body positivity and different body representation. And thankfully there's a lot more young adult books now that feature Latina characters, but it's still slow. The progress is really slow. And sometimes it's hard to even just find those, or to like know where to look to find them, you know?
Absolutely. Like, I love that you brought up America Ferrera because she literally was like the plus size person for me.
Yes.
That girl in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is just a little bit bigger than everyone else, but like not quite like plus size to what you hope to see, because it's just like there's a very limited window of like how fat people will let you be in media, and it's just like I need more than just her to reflect on. And I've read that you're very into 90s and 2000s kind of things.
Yes.
If you could place Charlie in any of your favorite films from the era, what would it be and why?
Oh man, that is such a good question. Okay, so I kind of want Charlie to be in the movie Clueless because I love that movie, and I feel like her style would be to die for in that film. Like if she was like, let's, no offense to Cher, but let's replace Cher with Charlie and have her have this like incredible experience. I think obviously it would change everything about the movie, but she kind of deserves it, right? Like let's see Charlie in some amazing plaid outfits. And yeah, I think that'd be so fun.
I was so hoping you were gonna say Clueless. That was, I don't know. Whenever I read books, I love movies, and
Mhm.
so I'm like, this needs to be a TV show. This needs to be a movie. And Fat Chance Charlie Vega is giving me so much of what I want in film. And so, like, off the top of your head, what would be some actors or actresses that you would want to play characters in your book?
Okay, so first, I selfishly want to be like a teacher or something in the background because if this ever happens, I very much would like to just like creep on set and just be like, hey, everyone, here I am. But I did, like, I spent some time thinking about this just because, like, who doesn't love daydreaming about what could be? And I actually felt like I had a hard time coming up with who would play these characters because I don't know of many like fat brown actresses that are out there. And so I know I've heard like one person had suggested maybe Jess Marie Garcia, who is phenomenal, and she's from I think it's called On My Block on Netflix, or
So
On the Block or something like that. She's
watch it.
yeah.
Really amazing.
Okay, I haven't watched it yet. It's in my watch list, but I've heard it's so good. But she's a little older than Charlie is, right? So I don't know, like demographics wise, if that actually would work. So I'm trying to like envision who might star as these characters. Like, Amelia is dark skinned, and how many, dark skinned Black actresses do we know that are in that age range? And like Brian's Korean. And so I feel like I would love if this became a movie or a TV show or whatever. I would love if it like introduced us to new actors and actresses who maybe have been trying to like break into Hollywood but haven't been given those like opportunities yet. And then obviously, like I said, selfishly, I just want to show up in the background scene of at least one of the scenes.
It's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where it's like, oh, I see the author. They're in.
Yes.
Um,
Do you have any thoughts on like who you might want to see in like a role? I'm so curious.
I was thinking, and I was like, okay, I don't know of many actresses in that I could place in like Charlie's role specifically, because I was like, Jessica is older, and then I was like, I'm absolutely in love with Madison Reyes from Julian Phantom.
Yes.
Gives me so much life, but like I need to have that like body representation before anything else. So for me, I would love like an open call, because like that's what happened with Madison Reyes, and like she's amazing.
She's so good.
So much talent out there that it's like, yes, let's pull someone from like the, trying to make it, and they get to have their first role, and it's just like a huge moment of like, this is somebody you can't place anywhere else, because there's not an actress out there like this person. So yeah, I would love an open call, honestly.
Yeah, same. I just feel like there's so few roles that exist already. So I would love if this could just provide an opportunity. And like, I feel like there is an actress out there who's young, who's like, I am made for this, who just hasn't had a shot yet.
So I also wanted to ask, before writing and becoming an author, what other dreams did you have for yourself? And do you think you'll make them a part of your characters like you made Charlie a writer?
So I had a lot of like aspirations that were all kind of creative based. So like Charlie, I enjoy going to art class and like practicing art. I'm not the best at it, but it's something I enjoy doing. So like I bought myself an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and like I try to practice when I can. And so I kind of gave that to Brian in the book. And his interests are also based on my husband, who is an artist and a graphic designer. So I feel like I want to revisit that, giving a main character the interest of being interested in art, whether that is graphic design or like painting or something like that. And I also had big dreams when I was young of like becoming a fashion designer, which I have no skills. Like I can't sew, I can barely draw, but I do think that's like a fun thing to sort of play with. And it would be fascinating to have a fat girl who wants to design clothes, right? Because then we can talk about all of those things that if you're fat, you experience, and like the frustration of not being able to find things that both are cute and look good on you and fit you. And so I had Charlie go through that a little bit in the book, and she finally finds clothes that sort of look nice on her and that make her feel confident. But I think it would be really empowering to have a character who can create those clothes and create that fashion, and sort of talk even deeper about how fashion has typically excluded any bodies that don't fit a very, very narrow definition of what a model looks like. And so I think there could be something really powerful about like taking that back and being like, oh no, fashion's for me too. Fashion's for my body. And here are all of the ways that I'm going to reclaim that.
Absolutely. While you were talking, I was literally just thinking of like that episode of That's So Raven where she's like walking in the fashion show and they're like, oh, we replace you with a skinny model. And like, it's always so ridiculous to me that like when I'm thinking of like body positivity, it's like from my childhood. Cause like now, even though like, you see a lot more body positive like campaigning. You don't see them enough in like media and like characters just like doing anything other than like combating like bad ideas about their body. And it's like that's not their only character. Like that's what I love about Charlie is she has depth, she has interest, she has her friend, and like it's nuanced. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really want to just make a lot of stories, hopefully in the future, that all feature fat characters, and that for some of them, I don't even want it to really be a thing they think about or mention, because for some people that is like they don't spend all of this time thinking about what their body looks like. They're just trying to live their lives. And I think we don't get enough of that. Like you said, like, so for this first book, I thought it was really important to tackle some of these issues, to show what it's actually like to live as a fat person and what are some of these things that like we have to think about. But at the same time, I also love stories where it's like this character is fat, but it really has nothing to do with anything. They're just living their life. They have goals and dreams and all of that, because we don't get that enough, right? We're often like, fat characters are often like the fat best friend who's just there to support the main character. And I'm like, no, all fat girls deserve to be the main characters, and they get to do their own adventures.
Absolutely. And like the best friend character is always more redeeming than the main character. And it's like, so when are we getting their show? Because
yes,
about them.
exactly.
So I love how in this book, fat is not a bad word. It's just a word to describe like how someone looks. And honestly, like I had to have a lot of people teach me to be comfortable with that word, and like because of my own connotations and like having to do with shame and like things like that. And just how it's normalized. And I wouldn't say like there's necessarily like one villain for Charlie. I would say like it's kind of like a mindset forced onto her. But I was wondering like if that's what you were trying to go for, or if there was like a clear like antagonist other than like the guy who ruins.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we won't talk about him because he doesn't even deserve it. But so I really went in trying to just show all of these different ways that people who are fat or who are plus size feel these intense pressures. So Charlie gets it from everybody, right? Like she obviously gets, like, she's internalizing a lot of the messages, but she's on social media. She sees these, brands and whoever who say things like you need to love yourself, but also not you because you're fat. So like you need to change and you can't love yourself. And so she's dealing with these like competing ideas all the time. And then she gets it from like that classmate who makes an offhanded comment about her. There's like a saleswoman when she's at the mall who makes a comment to her about how she won't be able to fit into anything in this store. And then of course there's her mom who has very big opinions about Charlie and Charlie's body. So I definitely was trying to like use, I think, just like fat phobia in general as the villain, and not so much as one specific person, and show like how, how fat phobia really creeps into our own ideas about ourselves, because we can't escape it. And it's something that we sort of get taught from when we're really little, right? Like we get taught these ideas of like, your body is open for judgment. People look at you and they make assumptions. But we think about these things when we talk about food, and we have like good foods and bad foods. And we learn pretty early, especially as like girls, that that fat is a bad word. And so I wanted to sort of reclaim that word in like for Charlie and in the book, because it is weaponized still, and it still is a word that's used very often as an insult. And for me personally, I used to be like so hurt by that word, and this like small 3-letter word felt like it had so much power and that it carried so much like stigma with it. And so I really wanted to kind of reclaim that and get myself comfortable with saying this word and sort of removing all of those big emotions that get attached to it. And I felt like, well, if people are going to call me fat anyway, then I can call myself fat and I can feel nothing when they say those things. And that felt so powerful to me, to finally be able to be like, yeah, this is just how I describe my body. It's not any different than if I say I'm tall or I'm short or I'm brown. It's the same thing. I'm fat. And that is the word that I like. But I do know it's also kind of controversial and not everybody likes that word. And, you know, I respect that. I feel like choose what word works for you, and that, like, let's support everybody. But for me, I like the word fat, and I wanted to put it out there, like, in the title as like, this is what you're getting into when you pick this book up, and this is what you can expect. And this is about a powerful fat girl.
I love the title so much. Like, again, when I saw it, the cover, the title, I was like, yes, this is everything to me. And honestly, we could go into a whole discussion about how, like, society tries to punish people who are above a certain weight or look a certain way. And, you know, in the scenes where she's like talking about being in gym or like going and try on clothes, it's just like everything is telling you you can't fit in or you can't meet a certain standard. And it's just like so suffocating. So, like, this book is sure to touch so many lives, and I'm just so excited for what you have coming up. So I love the fact that Charlie begins to like foster a space where she gets to feel like she is just equally as ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of my own journey of like self-love. And I just wanted to know, like, growing up, what sort of affirmed your identity, and how do your experience as a whole kind of shape how you create fictional worlds?
So I had a similar-ish experience to Charlie in coming into my own about my body. And I think that my fatness and obviously my brownness, like, there's no escaping it, right? Like, I experienced the world as a fat Puerto Rican girl. And that, like, I can't turn any of those things off. That is how other people perceive me. And so therefore it like affects every interaction that I have. So, a lot of what I like, so for a long time, I just felt like I was so different. I grew up in a town where, you know, I had friends and people were nice to me and whatever, but no one looked like me. And that was really alienating because no matter how nice people are to you, if nobody looks like you in a classroom and nobody looks like you on TV, you really question yourself. So I found a lot of like hope and solace online, like in the early days of the internet. So this was like before social media. But I was part of this, like, I found this community called Fashionista, and it used to exist on LiveJournal way back in the day. And so it was like a journaling, like kind of like pre-Tumblr. And this community was very feminist, very you know, social justice oriented, and it was fat. There were all of these fat people from all different walks of life who were connecting and who were sharing pictures of themselves in beautiful clothes. And that was like the first time in my life, one, that I was seeing other bodies that looked like mine, and two, where I was seeing them like wear beautiful clothing and wear beautiful outfits. And I thought, oh my God, I can look cute too. Like, this is wild. And so it was a great resource. And it was so linked to a lot of the other things that I've been experiencing that I didn't have words for. So I didn't know that there was a term like fat phobia. I didn't know that some of the things I was experiencing, you know, as a Puerto Rican person counted as discrimination and racism. Like, these were in like such the early days that I just didn't know that what I was experiencing, other people also were experiencing. So it helped me like find the language and the words to articulate those things. And connect me with other people who thought the same way that I did, who wanted a more, equitable and like just society for people who don't fit the straight, white, cis, wealthy male, that we kind of idolize. So that was huge for me. And it really helped like push me, I think, on the path of wanting to explore, how do we make this world have room for all of us and really celebrate all of these different voices and all these different experiences. And so that sort of translates into what I try to do with my books, or this book, and I am working on another one. But just like coming back to this idea that people who for so long have been told that they're not the main characters, that they're not the demographics that matter, that they have things that are maybe not the most like ideal. Like, and when it comes to being fat, most people think like, well, who would want to be fat? Nobody wants to be fat. And we feel that same way about race, ethnicity. We feel that about ability, right? Like nobody wants to be somebody who has a disability. And we say all of these things that are so hurtful and harmful. And so I'm hoping that I can bring into like the YA sphere these ideas that no, all of our experiences are valid, and here are the ways in which they're valid. And I want to try and create these characters that embody those identities, put them on the page, spell it out so that there's no guesswork, and then offer some of that representation that we so deeply need. So like in addition to Charlie being fat and being Puerto Rican, Amelia is a Black pansexual girl, which like, I feel like we don't get those characters. And I intentionally wanted to like write it out using the language so that there's no guesswork. So people who pick this book up, if they are Black, if they are pansexual, they can see Amelia and feel like that character is theirs. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to read between the lines. This is for you. In the same way that Charlie is for you if you are a Latina and you're fat and all these other things. So even though I'm writing these books that are, about love and that are about friendship and about, there are fluffy elements, there's funny elements, at the end of the day, it's really what I'm trying to do is create space that helps people feel like their identities are valid and hopefully help start conversations about some of these really deeply meaningful things that we're experiencing and that we're talking about with our friends, but that don't always get that validation from, mainstream books or TV and things like that.
Absolutely. I love how you bring up like your identity, no matter what it is not like a hindrance. Like it should be celebrated. It should be like seen. And like Amelia, like from the first few pages was like, yes, just yes. Like
yes.
A dark-skinned Black girl to just be loved and like wanted, and like I just love that so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
So as writers often state, no book is perfect on draft one. So how many rewrites did you go through to get to the point of having this version of the book?
So, God, okay, so I started this in like 2016-ish. And so I had at least 1 or 2 read-throughs on my own before I even did anything with the book. And I like to go back, and when I'm writing and rewriting, I tend to go like to the beginning of the book and reread it for like flow and everything. So it probably ended up being a lot of rereads as I was writing this first draft, just because that's kind of how I work. It helps me get back into the voice of Charlie. Like it just helped me sort of see everything and see all those puzzle pieces fit together. So there were a couple of read-throughs and drafts to start. And then there were a couple of other ones too. So like once I got to the place of being ready and feeling like it was okay enough that I could start querying agents and things like that, once I heard back from my agent that I signed with, she had some suggestions to make to the book. So I went back and furiously made all of those edits and suggestions so that it could be stronger, so that we could then take it to publishers and hopefully get some interest with that. And so then once I heard back and we got a deal, it was like the greatest day of my life. I came home, I put on some Ariana Grande, and I was dancing around my living room with my dog. And then we got our edit letter. And so there's usually a couple of rounds of edits with any book. So there's usually like an edit letter. So you do all of those edits. Then there's like developmental edits, line edits, and copy edits. So there's usually like 4-ish rounds of edits depending on how things go. So this was my first book, so I had all 4. So some authors are like so perfect that they only need like 1 or 2 rounds, but I was such a newbie, I needed all of the rounds of edits. So I would say after like after I got a contract and like had a publisher, I would say it was probably like 4 rounds of solid edits. And nothing really changed about the book. I would say most of it was like fleshing characters out and sort of adding depth to certain areas that maybe didn't have the depth that they needed when they started. So one good example is Charlie and her relationship with her father's side of the family. So she's got these 2 cousins who are, I think, so fun, and like I want to meet them in real life, but they didn't exist in the first draft of the book. They just like weren't there at all. And we never got to see what that side of the family was like, even though I had written about them and I knew in my head they were really important. So it was like in the editing process, we got to build them out and have this like kind of beautiful reunion between Charlie and her cousins, and sort of have them kind of reunite and talk to one another and celebrate each other again. So that was a really fun one.
I can't imagine the story without the cousins. I love them so
Right?
much. Felt like I know them. Like
Yes.
that are just so real and fun, and like people just like they bring so much life, and like I love that. So I'm really curious, who was the first person you shared this story with? And like what author friends do you have that like you kind of rely on to be like, hey, I need to know if this is working?
So the first person I shared this with was my husband. So he is who I based Brian off of. And so a lot of their, like Charlie and Brian's, like the beginnings of their relationship was inspired by the beginnings of my relationship with my husband, because we met in high school. And so he is like the best. He listens to me go on and on about, okay, so I have this idea and here's what I'm thinking. And then this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And so it was a lot of that at the beginning. And then, you know, I'm a very like solitary and private person when I'm writing. Like I get nervous to share it with anybody until it feels like it's perfect. So I didn't share this with anybody except for him. And then I started sending it out to agents. So that was it. Like I was so new to the whole process of publishing and of writing that I didn't even know about things like critique partners and writing groups. I just was so green and just so new to everything that I was almost like, if I find a writing group, then they might tell me this is bad and I might lose my nerve. And what if they hate it and then I have nothing? So I ended up not really sharing it until a lot later in the process. But now I feel like, having gone through this, I've been really fortunate to meet a lot of authors and to talk a lot about process and like find out how people have all different kinds of writing styles and editing styles. And, you know, it's nice to finally like have groups of people to like lean on a little bit, because I didn't, like I said, I just didn't have that when I was writing this book. And so now I'm part of 2 different writing groups and author groups, and one is it's called the 20 Wonders, and they're just a wonderful group of authors who all have books coming out in 2021. And so they've been great to talk not just about the craft, but also about everything else that comes along with publishing that I had no idea existed, like the marketing side of things, and like, okay, how do you set up a launch event? Okay, how do you do XYZ? So that's been great. And then I'm also part of Las Musas, which is a specific Latina and non-binary group of writers who we all just like get to talk about being brown and being writers, and it's the best. And so we get to talk about what's it like in publishing when you are writing something that's own voices and people want you to change certain pieces of it. What is that like? What about when you encounter somebody who really wants you to italicize all of the Spanish words in your manuscript and you don't want to because you don't want, like, it doesn't feel right to like other your language. What does that look like? So that has been like a hugely helpful resource for me. And now I finally have people to bother aside from my husband with my writing endeavors. So I'm sure he's a little bit grateful for it.
The groups that you mentioned, I love like following like the like hashtags on Twitter and like the discussion. Yeah. Like just last year the Latinx Kid Lit Book Festival and like everyone's things, and it was so wonderful to be a part of that and kind of like see so many Latinx authors. And two other authors that are part of those groups that I'm like so excited to read their books are Lycan Zia and then Johnny Garza Villa.
Stop, we are buddies.
In their books, like your guys' 3 books are just like, I don't care how, I don't care what I'm doing in school, like this is happening. I love those spaces that.
Oh, thank you. So I don't know if you've had a chance to read. So Lakin has the first chapter of her book available. It's on the Las Musas website. You can find it. So I read that first chapter and I was like, oh my God, I need this book ASAP. Like, it's so good. Her writing is honestly so, the way I like to describe it is like, it's like a melody. Like, it's just, oh, every single word fits exactly where it's supposed to be. She's phenomenal. And I'm reading Johnny's book right now because I got an advanced copy. You're gonna love it. It is so good. I've been like messaging them like, Johnny, oh my God, Johnny, I have so many feelings, Johnny. And they're like, okay, calm down. But also I love this. So it's been great. And then they're texting me because Johnny's currently reading Charlie Vega too. So it's really nice.
I love that so much. Yeah. I also got ARCs of both of their books. I was blessed. And so I just need to carve out some time, skip class for a little bit, and read these books because it's like, I can't wait until like I have time. It's just,
yes, I feel you. Although, you know, on the record, I cannot condone skipping class, blah, blah, blah. So, but you do you, right?
It's a scam. But, you know, we don't need to talk about that. Honestly. Speaking of college and like after high school stuff, would you ever like revisit the Charlie Vega universe and kind of like do a sequel? Because I love contemporary series. There's not enough of them. And I feel like the only ones we get are from like Jenny Han or like those kind of names, and it's like, no, give me more, please.
I honestly would love to revisit this series and to make this into a series, really, and come back to Charlie and Brian and Amelia and Kira and just like give them like all of the wonderful like happily ever afters over and over that they deserve in all different like stages of their life, right? Like, so right now they're juniors. I would love to see them senior year. Like, what does that look like? Thinking about college and like all the stress of that. And I know that has been done, but it's also like such a universal kind of experience. And to talk about like to incorporate some of the discussions that are happening now where people discuss like, well, what do we like, does everybody need to go to college? What about like student debt? What does that look like? And I think that's really fascinating and not always talked about in YA books all the time. Like sometimes it's just assumed every single person will go to college, which is great if you go to college. Like I went to college, but I think the conversation's kind of shifting where there is more, I think, acceptance for not everybody necessarily going to a 4-year school. Maybe you're going to, you know, a community college, which might be more affordable. Maybe you're going to a trade school, and just like kind of exploring how there are different options that you can do once you graduate high school. And what does that look like?
This is my official campaign to get a sequel on, because like I have that conversation with like my fellow readers friends who like were like, I don't understand why so many YA characters just like go straight to Harvard and they just like get the magical internship, and it's like that wasn't afforded to me, and I want someone to give me community college. I want someone to give me, you know, a year off of school to like travel or whatever, and just like
Yes.
I love Charlie so much. I just
Thank you. I actually have seen a couple of authors that I admire talking on Twitter about like, why is there not a new adult category anymore? Like that in between space between young adult and, you know, straight up adult. Why don't we talk about like college stories or college age stories, like that, those years where you're really figuring out, what do I want to do with my life, you know? Because those are really pivotal years too.
I don't know if you've read Mary H.K. Choi. I literally talk about her to whoever will listen. She is like my new adult person. And reading her most recent book, Yolk, and then Fat Chance Charlie Vega, which both do like body and like life choices. I was like, oh my God. I'm like having to confront a lot right now, college and body. And it was a beautiful time.
Oh, good. I have that one on my list to read. It's so hard because there's so many good books. I feel like I just need to quit everything else and just read.
Let's just take some time.
Just do that.
So I love the relationship between Amelia and Charlie. They're like really tight knit. They stand up for each other. And like I adored like childhood best friends. Like that's just gives me a lot. So what was an inspiration for this friendship?
So I also love childhood best friends. I just think they're like, if you can manage to be friends with somebody through all of those years, through all those big changes, that is truly like the most impressive. And so what I wanted to do was kind of make this friendship that I kind of wished I had had. Like, I wish I had met someone in second grade and we just ended up being besties for our whole life. And then it's like, you know, you just grow up together. And so I love that idea. So I knew from the beginning I wanted that to sort of happen for Charlie and Amelia. But with them, I also wanted to create this really strong, like female friendship, like almost like a sisterly relationship where they have, yeah, there's a little bit of jealousy between the two of them, but not in a toxic way. It's more in a way of like, God, you're just so amazing. And I just want to be more like you. And like, why can't I be more like you? Because that has been my experience with a lot of like the wonderful friends that I've had. It's not a jealousy because I don't want good things for them. It's a jealousy because I'm like, you're so great. I want to be more like you. And so to me, like their friendship, I wanted to make a friendship that was like hashtag goals and that also just celebrated what it's like to have like friends who get you and who support you and who want the best for you and would do anything for you. So I didn't have that like BFF when I was, you know, growing up, but I did have good girlfriends. And then after I graduated college, I ended up finding a wonderful group of friends who I'm still friends with. And they like, we gas each other up all the time where it's like, yes, we celebrate you and we love you. And like, there's something so magical in that when you find your group of friends and you find people who get you and who understand you. And so that's what I wanted to give to Charlie and Amelia, especially because when I was growing up, and this has changed a lot now, but when I was reading books when I was like, you know, 15, 16, a lot of the female friendships had this like, I don't know, this like bite to them where they would like be mean to each other. And I was like, that's not really my actual experience in life. Like, you know, like we're not mean to each other. And this is not like productive. And so I wanted to show like, yeah, of course, you're a teenager, you can have these complicated feelings, but you can also really want good things for each other and you can really like end up becoming like found family. And so I really just wanted to give them what they deserve, Charlie and Amelia.
I love that so much. So I couldn't help but think of another book character from Elise Bryant's book Happily Ever Afters while reading about Charlie's interest in romance and writing. My
Yes.
has been trying to make me read this book, and it's like, oh my god, I can't get to it right now, but I want to. And I just wanted to know, like, are there any book characters that you've read recently that you enjoyed and would recommend, and that you would think Charlie would be friends with in a if fictional worlds collided?
Totally. I just read Happily Ever Afters, and it is truly worth the hype. So good. There's no, in no universe would Charlie and her not be besties. Like they would be each other's friends, I feel like. I'm trying to think of who else. Oh, so Charlie would probably also be friends with Maritza from Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I don't know if you, I'm obsessed. Okay. So I feel like Maritza is the kind of friend that we all deserve. And so I want that for Charlie, and like they can talk about like brown girl magic and stuff. Like just like be friends. And I feel like that would be wonderful. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else from like what I've read recently. Honestly, so now that I'm reading Johnny Garzavia's book, Jules, the main character, I think, and Charlie would be like this. Like, I think they would be besties. And Johnny and I have done a couple of like Twitter chats together, and we're always like, why are Jules and Charlie not friends right now? Like, let's write a book where they're pals. We can have this like crossover because I really think they would be friends. So when you read those, read that arc from Johnny, let me know if you agree.
I would love like a what if it's us type of deal where it's like instead of romance and they're just meeting, they just become best friends and they're just
Yes.
because that's Johnny to me, just like chaos and like humor, and I'm just like, I love you.
Johnny is the actual best, like can confirm.
Um, so because I love talking all things pop culture, I have to mention your playlist, which I literally just listened to for like the umpteenth time last night because Beyonce, and
Yeah.
I love it so much. So among the songs, what do you think kind of best connects to your book, if at all, and which is your personal favorite to listen to?
Okay, so there's a song in there that's called Got Body by Lion Babe. And I feel like that is Charlie's song. So, like, it's just all about how, you know, she says, I've got body no matter what I wear. So, and I feel like that's so Charlie, especially by the end of the book, where she's just like, you know what? This is what I look like. This is who I am. And I'm going to embrace it. And also, like, Brian thinks I'm hot. So this is great, right? Like, and I think I'm hot. So I feel like that embodies probably the book, or at least like the feeling of the book towards the end of it. And my personal favorite, I mean, I included Beyonce songs on there for a reason because she is so amazing. And I do love Flawless and just like coming back to that feeling of like, I remember first hearing that song, and I know it's old now, but I remember when I first heard it, I was just like, what? A mainstream song by Beyonce talking about feminism and talking about these things that I care so deeply about. That felt like such a huge moment. And then she had this moment where she was performing at one of the award shows and she had the word feminist come up behind her. And I was like, yes, yes, I can't believe I'm alive to see this. This is the best. So anyway, I've fangirled, but yes.
I love how in your acknowledgments, you're just like, thank you, Beyonce, just because.
Yes, we love her.
Like, I owe Beyonce and Mariah Carey specifically
Mhm.
everything. They are
Yes.
moms. In the
Yes,
world, they're my moms.
I agree. Have you read Mariah Carey's book that she came out with not that long ago?
I haven't, and I'm just like, am I a stan? Am I a stan if I'm not reading her book?
Okay. If I can recommend the audiobook version, I highly recommend. So first of all, it's like then you can listen to it when you're, you know, you're in the car or walking somewhere or whatever. And it is so good. Mariah reads it. She also sings in it. Like she sings the titles, she'll sing little song lyrics. oh my God, it's truly like, it is the perfect like celebrity memoir. Like there's so much juice in it. I'm sorry, I know I'm like losing my mind over how good it is, but I swear it's so good.
There's a YA book that's like by a Mariah Carey stan. I can't think of the title right now. I think it's Can't Take This Away by Steven Salvatore. Literally,
Yes.
it's out, I think, tomorrow, and I'm like,
Tomorrow.
I gotta get it.
You have to. I'm gonna get it too.
Stan. So I'm like really excited. It's like,
yes.
do you think you'll ever incorporate like your love for music in that way in one of your books?
Maybe. So the only thing with like my love for music is like I'm old now, and so a lot of the music I like is not the coolest music. So I do have to give a shout out to TikTok, which I think has expanded my horizons and introduced me to a lot of artists I would not have known about otherwise. But in my formative years, I loved boy bands like a lot, like so much. Like I loved the Backstreet Boys, I loved NSYNC, I loved 98 Degrees, and I actually kind of want to write like a middle grade novel about the very real boy band wars of the 90s and 2000s and how you had to pick like a side of which boy band you loved. And so in that way, I think I would love to revisit that kind of music, and just talk about like how serious it was where you like had to pick a side and like use that to like explore friendship and sort of how you figure yourself out with music, because it's so pivotal, right? Like music is weirdly so personal, and it shapes a lot of like how we feel about ourselves. And like everybody has their go-to like artist or song when they want to feel hyped up, or when you're like, I'm sad and I want to cry, so I'm going to put on my sad music. And it's different for everybody, and I find that so fascinating. And so yeah, I probably will in the future but I just don't know. I don't know exactly. Maybe it's just like an ode to Beyonce.
That is a thought, and I'm very much into that thought. That would be an insta buy for me, honestly. And I think it'd be so cool to like explore like how like a Latina has to deal with like Americanized music versus like you know, Spanish like hardcore music, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And like I want an I'll Be the One by Layla Lee just
Yes.
in the Latinx space. And
How good would that be? Oh my God. Okay, now I need this. You should write that.
maybe.
I'm just saying.
So you mentioned how like TikTok and stuff they keep you like in the know. Something else I want to know is like how do you think your job as a social media manager assists you in connecting with readers and like generally staying up to date with what's relevant?
So I will say, like, I have to spend a lot of time on social media in general for my job, and also just to know like what things are changing, what's trending currently. So I think that actually benefits me in when I'm trying to write about teenagers, because I have to know what people are actually talking about in order to turn that into, you know, content and whatever for my day job. And like I said, I have always kind of been this like girl who just like loves the internet even from the early days, and I can't believe that's finally paid off in adulthood as like somebody who now spends all their time on social media. So it's definitely I would say my day job in social media is super helpful, because I got on TikTok before well before the pandemic. I was actually on maternity leave when I got a TikTok account, and I was just like, oh my God, so much is happening here. And I know a lot of people who are my age were like really resistant to joining at first, but it ends up like you get introduced to so much that you would miss out on if you weren't there. And so I think like always going to where young people are is just fascinating. And so maybe I'm not like the most active as myself because I'm an old person, but I do love to like just kind of watch and just be interested in it. And I think for anybody who wants to write young adult books, I think you have to have like this real sincere respect and interest for people who are younger than you. Like, I truly believe that young people are like so much better than everybody else at pretty much everything, because you guys are so smart and so open-minded and willing to actually talk about things, and that's very healthy. And so I really love that for us. Like, I love the idea of like a future that is run by people who are younger than me. And like, I fully am like, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about, but young people know what they're talking about. And I do think you have to, like, if you're writing books for younger audiences, there has to be that appreciation, and there has to be that like respect and whatever. Like, I never want to make young people feel like I'm thinking of them as like a specimen or anything, or like that I don't, or that I don't genuinely appreciate what they're interested in, because like the whole, you've had to have seen this, like millennials versus Gen Z, where they're like fighting over how they part their hair. And it's like, really? This is what we're talking about? Like, I feel like I don't want to become that kind of millennial that's like personally attacked because I do a 3/4 part. Like, I'm old, I'm gonna get older, we're all gonna get older, and that's great. And I just want to like spend my time quietly on social media, taking everything in and really enjoying myself and call it a day.
I feel like this pandemic, just something new sprouts up every day, and it's just like, that is a whole mess and a half.
Right? Like, let me just put my phone away because I need a break.
Speaking of the pandemic, what have been your like favorite binges, whether it be like music, film, or like books?
Okay, so I actually loved Julie and the Phantoms like so much on Netflix. So good. Do you remember the like moon necklace that Julie was wearing throughout the season? I went and bought one off of Etsy because I could not stop thinking about it. So that was a huge one for me. Beginning of the pandemic, I definitely watched the Tiger King whole like mess, which I like wouldn't recommend in retrospect, but it was really good at the time for like distractions. I read Cemetery Boys during the pandemic, and just it like instantly became one of my favorite books because it just has everything. I don't know. It's just like, to me, like chef's kiss, perfect piece of literature. I'm obsessed. I also read I'll Be the One by Lila Lee, which I loved. I just thought everything about that book was just so sweet. I love the musical elements to it. I loved the love in it, and also just like getting a look at like, I don't know, behind the scenes of, of like singing competitions. I thought that was really fascinating. I'm trying to think of what else. I just watched Ginny and Georgia. I don't know if you've heard of this. It was on Netflix, and it was like fine, but it was a nice distraction.
Watched it just because like the clips that people post, I'm just like, oh my god.
I know, but it ended up being one of those that like I couldn't. It's like a this is terrible, but it's like a train wreck where you're like, I have to know what happens next, even though yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yes, and I love it.
Exactly. Yes, you get me. So I feel like my top picks were definitely the Cemetery Boys and Julie and the Phantoms. And were there any movies that I watched? Oh, I did watch this one on Amazon. It was about this girl and guy who are like stuck in a time loop. They have to keep living the same day over and over. So it had big Groundhog Day vibes, but it ended up being a really sweet love story. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it was really good.
One of my favorite books is Opposite of Always. I don't know if you've read it, but it's that Groundhog Day vibe of like, this guy has to save his girlfriend from death, and then he has to live the same day over again. It's just like,
Oh my God.
literally like 400, 500 pages. I didn't sleep because I was like, I need to know. And I also adore Julie and the Phantoms. I literally was like, I need to watch it with a different person. each time. I've watched it like 6 times. And then with Cemetery Boys, I was like, this is a trend. We're getting a lot of ghost love. And you know what? I don't hate it.
I kind of love it.
So my last question is, are there any other genres you like to write in, and what's next for you?
So I've only written contemporary like romance so far. But I do have like dreams of writing other genres. I just feel like I need to read more beyond that first, because like I end up just coming back to reading love stories because I love them so much. But I do kind of want to like maybe someday write a YA horror like book of some kind, especially because they're like picking up steam and I'm fascinated by them. But I'm also a big scaredy cat myself. But I think it could be fun to write something that has some kind of like scary element to it. And then what comes next is I'm working on a second book. So I'm in like the editing process now. Yay. So this book also features a fat brown girl, and she's a little different than Charlie. So she has a lot of feelings similar to Charlie, but she's very like internal, and her external is very tough, and she doesn't want people to know like that she's going through things. And she tends to kind of be a little bit of like a liar, exaggerator, maybe doesn't always tell the truth. And that ends up manifesting itself in an Instagram account that she decides she's going to make, but she just steals her friend's pictures and decides that she's going to use those and pretend that she's that person. So she's like, I stole my friend's face. It's fine, right? What could go wrong? I'm just going to catfish people. And it goes really terribly because she ends up meeting somebody that she kind of enjoys as this catfish. And so then she's got to figure out, what do I do now? Because I have somebody that I'm interested in, but this person thinks I'm somebody else. And what does that sort of look like? And it kind of dives into, like an obsession with social media and sort of like how a lot of what we see is not always truthful. And what does that mean? So she's just trying to figure herself out. We hope for the best for her. So
I love that. The last book I read where like catfishing was a thing, I like fell in love. It was Felix Ever After, and I was like, this is like morally wrong, but because I love this character, it's okay.
right.
Oh, I don't know. We gotta hold him accountable, but also love. Like
right.
in any sense, I'm just like, morals are just thrown out the window.
You can't, obviously in real life, you can't do it, but in a book?
Yes.
Right?
I loved talking to you today. Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. I honestly can't wait for your next book.
Thank you.
About Chance Charlie Vega over and over again. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. Thank you for all of your truly phenomenal questions. So I hope I answered them well. And yeah, I had a great time.
Okay, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.